while I'm blowing through the stop signs. Babe, I'm running out of time, running all the red lights. Running all the red lights, hitting 90 down Riverside. Got me working all for you into overtime. And you know what's on my mind while I'm blowing through the stop signs. Babe, I'm running out of time, running all the red lights. Running all the red lights through the sirens speeding by. Got me working all for you into overtime. And it's almost paradise as I pray to make it through the night. Babe, I'm running out of time, running all the red lights.
Yeah, I'm hoping that loving you ain't a crime, yeah. I'm steady trying to put in my time, yeah. Tell me if we're running out of time.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival live stream. My name is Edward Hong, and I am the program volunteer with the festival office here. I'll be moderating today's Filmmakers Q&A with the creators featured in The Darkness Within, which is all horror-based, all good times right here. We'll be taking audience questions, so make sure to type your audience questions into the comment section. And in the meantime, let's go around this virtual room and have everyone introduce themselves and their film. Whoever wants to go first, I will volunteer Luisa. Yeah, you.
Me? Sorry, you cut out, so I wasn't sure.
Hi, yes, you.
My film is called Daybreak. I'm the director, writer, producer, and I'm zooming in from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, known as Vancouver, BC, Canada. I'm going to popcorn it too. Trevor.
Hey, my name is Trevor Joe. I am the writer, director, and actor of Out of Order, he, him pronouns, calling in from LA. I think it's, I don't remember which one it is. I think it's, I'll have to look it up. But thank you for the space, and I will popcorn it over to, let's see, Min-Soon and
Hi.
Teddy.
You. Thanks, Trevor. I'm Min Sun Park, and this is Teddy Tenenbaum. That's fun. And we're the co-producers, co-writers, and co-directors of Koreatown Ghost Story, and we're calling in from Los Angeles. And I'll go with JoJo.
I gotta unmute my mic. Hi, I'm Joanna Fang, and I produced and have a small role in a film called Smiley Death Face, and I will continue the train of also calling in from Los Angeles. I will send it over to Kevin.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Campbell. I'm the co-writer and director of Receiver, and I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada. And I guess by process of elimination, there's only one person I can send it to from here, and that's Tahari.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tahari Vijdani, and I'm the lead actress in Receiver film, and I am also calling in from Toronto. And for some reason, my video now wants to be very glitchy, so I don't know.
Well, we'll get through it. It'll be all great. First off, thank you everyone here for spending your time, taking your time to do this. I've seen all your films. Actually, for all your films, I've seen it multiple times. It has gone through the festival circuit, not just with the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival, but also with many other horror film festivals. And it has been fantastic just seeing the reception and feedback that has gone from audience, whether virtual and in person. So first off, congrats to all of you guys for such a fantastic film. Let's get started. So my first question is that the beauty of creating horror is that more often than not, it draws real life situations that have either frightened us as kids or to this day as adults. What was the dark inspiration for your short? And if your lives were totally peaceful and sunshine daisy, were there any horror films or filmmakers that you are inspired by? We will go in the same order that before. So Luisa, you go first.
Okay. Is it possible to type that into the chat? Just because I have ADHD and it's like hard for me to focus sometimes.
Yes.
But I will start with the last question because that's easier for me. So people who inspired me in regards to horror, I worked on Supernatural as a trainee. And so I learned from some really great people about what horror can look like and some of the great directors. And so using that as inspiration and working with people like John Carpenter on The Fog, which is not a good movie, but it's funny and it's scary-ish. And so, but, you know, talking with people who are actually like really great at their job and storytelling, that's who I actually get just great inspiration of what horror can look like. And then what's the dark inspiration for my short? So my short, if you haven't seen it, is with has like a night hag, and basically it was like a weird dream sleep paralysis kind of thing, and I just like the monster in the closet kind of situation, and being unable to move and being freaked out by it. So there you go. That's me, and I'm going to pass it back down to Trevor.
What's up? I write a lot of different stuff, and when I was working on this, I kind of just wanted to try my hand at horror. And one of the first things I did was to write out a list of all the things that scare me, and not just like, oh shoot, that's scary, but it was like what really like deep down I'm frightened of, like things like never finding love in my life, and and dying alone, and I had to really be honest with myself. And from there, using my own personal experiences. So I'm a flight attendant as a day job. And when I'm on layovers, I run up and down the stairwell for exercise when it's too cold outside. And so when I was in the stairwell one time, I entered and the door locked behind me. And the only way to exit was to go all the way to the basement floor, which exited out into the parking garage. And this was like Minneapolis, Minnesota, dead of winter. So I had to run in my workout clothes, t-shirts and shorts, like all the way around to enter into the building again, because you couldn't get back in. And it was kind of a frightening experience, because I tried every door and I was like, what's going on? And only then did I find out that, I looked at the sign. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, real life experience was inspired by it. And I think that's where the best stories come from. Inspirations when it comes to horror, like one of my favorite horror films is this film called Wreck. It's like this Spanish film or Portuguese film, I forget. And it's like REC, and it's a found footage thing that's phenomenal. They did a remake of it and it's just not as good. So I highly recommend that if no one's ever seen it before. So yeah, that's it. Go ahead, guys. Oh.
All right, I'll take over. Oh no, Minsong's next.
No,
Yep.
Go right ahead. I'm not in a hurry. You can go ahead, Joe.
Oh yeah. We don't have to go. I'm just gonna pick on Luisa first all the time, and then it could just be free fall. Sorry, Luisa, you're basically the guinea pig. Haha. But from there, everyone else can just whenever you feel like going.
Okay, well, I'll go since that was the last order. So I've told the story several times because everyone always asks the same question, but so this story was inspired loosely, I'll say loosely, on a family story. My cousin, who was much older than me, passed away in Korea, like maybe 30 years ago at the age of 25, 2 weeks before her wedding day. She had a tragic accident going down a flight of stairs, and the banister broke off in her apartment building. She fell several stories to her death. And my aunt, her mother, was understandably devastated, but she came to believe that her daughter was haunting her every night, coming to her in her wedding dress. And she consulted a shaman about it. And the shaman told her that, well, your daughter wants to be married. And she died before she had that chance. And, and with Koreans, and I'm sure with many other Asians, marriage is like a big deal for continuing the family line. And even if you're dead, that's not an excuse not to get married. So she went ahead and consulted. There's actually a service where they marry dead spirits together so they can rest in peace in the afterlife with a companion. So she found another dead bridegroom that had passed away, and they married the two spirits together. And lo and behold, my aunt believed that her daughter stopped haunting her. So I was like maybe 10 when I heard that story, and like I couldn't sleep that night. I was just like, that's effed up. So that stayed with me. And so we started to marinate this idea of doing something maybe more culturally specific for a ghost story, because we're horror writers and we've written professionally for I don't know how many decades now. So we wanted to do something that was culturally specific, and that story just stood out. And as for, inspirations for other movies, do you have any you'd like to add?
Yeah, but it'll take me forever, so we can move on to JoJo.
Well, actually, what would be your, if you can, top 3?
Well, I can say that the movies that have inspired us recently, I'll say the one movie that inspired us most for the tone of Koreatown Ghost Story is definitely Rosemary's Baby. It's, in our mind, both a perfect marriage of horror and comedy, even though I wouldn't call it a comedy, and I wouldn't call ours a comedy, but there's plenty of humor, I think. And also, and then the 2 movies that I think have inspired us a lot in recent years are Orphanage, the Spanish horror film, because mainly because it's such a beautiful story, so it's horrific and beautiful at the same time. And then most recently, a movie that I recommend everybody see, His House, which is on Netflix, which is a truly horrific and beautiful film from Britain about immigrating to Britain without, being a refugee. It's about African refugees who end up in Britain and are living, of course, in a haunted house while they wait whether to find out what their fate will be. But it's a brilliant film.
Great.
And JoJo, take it away.
Sounds good. I literally just forgot the order. My memory is that bad. The inspiration for Smiley Deathface, I guess, growing up, you watch all the movies from the 70s and the 80s, and the horror films kind of exist in a world where if you cut the power line or you cut the phone line, then you're trapped in a setting, and then that's when, the craziness ensues. And so the challenges were like, so if we're living in 2020, how do we make a film that exists present day, when now everyone has backup battery generators and cell phones, we can just dial 911. So we kind of just took inspiration and kind of said, let's make a film that's completely immersed in modern technology, and let's take it a step further and make modern technology the villain itself. I'm inspired a lot by Steven Spielberg, who's not really a horror film, but Jaws is kind of a horror film. But I think our film specifically is very much inspired by Wes Craven. It's got kind of the funny jump scares. Reminds me a little bit. I say the film is like Scream meets emojis. So I think he made a lot of films that were inspiring in terms of like pushing the envelope in invading like horror films. But I just recently saw Halloween again, and I was like, oh, I forgot like John Carpenter is kind of another innovator in the horror world too. So I don't know. I think I'm inspired by a lot of directors, but those would be some of them.
That's great.
And I think I'm up next. So Receiver is the story of a young and idealistic Sri Lankan Canadian social worker at a telephone helpline who's hypnotized over the phone one night by a rather insidious caller with the power to control her mind. The point of inflection for that piece when my co-writer Luke Higginson and I were working on it was actually not my experience directly, but that of my former girlfriend, who's a social worker. And at the time that we were fleshing out the story, she was working at a telephone helpline, and through having a chance to see her experiences in the flesh, I really got a sense of the level of empathy and emotional labor that was expected of her in that role by not only her clients but also her employers, her bosses. And the more Luke and I started to drill down into that, the more it kind of started to scare us, because it brought up a lot of questions about the position of women in the workplace and helper roles within corporate structure, and primarily the question of the commodification of empathy. And the scary thing for us about that is when in a role like that you commodify somebody's empathy, you're basically weaponizing it against them and setting somebody up to be manipulated. And when we started then looking for an actual narrative, a jumping off point that would serve that purpose, then the concept of hypnotic seduction and the pickup artist community and stuff kind of came to the forefront. And for us, it became this really great icky stew of ways to tackle gender and workplace issues through the lens of a horror film. And I think we did something perhaps a little unexpected, which was that we really purposely did not seek out other horror films as inspiration, especially for me when I was getting ready to direct the thing and storyboarding it. We ended up pulling a lot of our inspiration from like 1970s Robert Altman movies and like early 1980s De Palma stuff. And two of the biggest touchstones for us, actually, when we were finalizing the script and putting together the film in prep, were Altman's Images and also Blowout by De Palma. So yeah, as for general horror films and filmmakers that inspire me, I think it changes with every project. So I could answer that question for you now, but it would basically be rendered irrelevant by tomorrow afternoon. But I mean, yeah, I think the thing that I love about horror as a storytelling space is that it tackles so many elemental things. You don't need to just be inspired by other horror storytellers, right? There are so many great avenues for talking about things that scare us in the core of ourselves that you can seek inspiration and touchstones from literally, I would say, just about any genre, even musicals, I would argue.
And then last but not least, Tahare, were there any horror films? I know you're the actor in this, but were there any horror films that you were inspired by, that helped you with the performance of your receiver?
Here's the thing. I rarely watched horror before doing this film, mainly because growing up I was never allowed to watch it, and then I just maintained that level of fear of horror that I didn't want to watch it. And so when I got cast in Receiver, I was like, okay, I need to get over this fear, and I need to start watching horror and psychological thrillers. So I think probably the first thing I watched was I think maybe Haunting of Hill House had just come out, so I think I had watched that, and I was scared because I'm easy to scare. But I think just the being naive about it all informed the character for Shriyani. So, but now I love it. I love watching horror, and I love kind of I just deep dived into Midnight Mass. Is that the recent one? By the same yeah. So yeah, but I'm
Midnight
not.
Mass.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. I'm not an expert, I would say, in the field.
That's totally great. That's totally fine too. I mean, I've come to realize that a lot of actresses and actors who do horror films, they're not exactly horror buffs, but they sure can convey fear, which actually leads right into the next question. And to surprise everyone, Luisa, you're not going to go first. I'm going to have Tahare go first, because the question is, for all of your shorts, the actors are placed through extraordinary circumstances and convey such a fantastic range of emotions throughout. All your short films have all that. What was the process to get your actors, or in this case, if you are the actor yourself, to get yourself in that heightened state, and what helped you in that process?
I would say what was really nice about the process is that we had a few days of rehearsal in advance, doing the table work, working with Kevin, working with the other actors. In prep for the role, I did meet with Stephanie, went down the deep dive of understanding the craft of being that care worker over the phone. As we were shooting, what was really interesting is that it was kind of very theatrical in the approach of how we shot it from top to tail. And and the support that was there throughout the process was very helpful from Kevin, I would say. But getting into the emotional height of it, I think having done that prep in the rehearsal was very helpful in discovering the character, discovering all the kind of the pains and fears and everything that she was going through, and that vulnerability, that real vulnerability, and that extreme exhaustion in where it starts, and then it goes from there. Tapping into kind of just kind of own experiences around that. Like, I haven't worked as a social worker, but understanding that kind of cultural need for a person to be responsible for one's family and to work hard and to overextend and to be that caregiver. So coming from that understanding really helped. And then going into kind of like the height of the film, I would say the most difficult thing was actually the transition of when I played Shriyani into changing into playing the double, because that was pretty intense. The sensation of fear and that emotion of fear into the switch of holding the hand and being the other character on the face, and that intensity. I found that I needed my double as an anchor for me, to be able to transition between both of those characters pretty instantly.
Oh, that's great. I realized that we have another actor who also doubled as the director, and that's Trevor. Tell us about the process. Like, obviously you had to direct it yourself, but then also to act. Like, what was that like?
I ended up having to get a co-director because for me, when I'm in the acting headspace, I can't think about the logistics of directing. But because, I talked extensively with my crew during pre-production, the DP knew exactly what I wanted. So the cinematographer, my entire crew pretty much understood my artistic intention. And also, it's really interesting. During the process of shooting, I ended up cutting an entire half day, and it was only a 2-day shoot. And this was a scene between me and my fiance in the film that I kind of flashed back to. And during the edit, it just didn't work because the tension was released if we cut away from the action. But in this moment, I felt, in the scene, it was, are you sure you want to enter into a marriage with this woman? And there was a fear there because, he wasn't sure. But in acting with this actress and having, both crying during this scene, it gave me the ammunition, because in my film, the film, this man finds that he realizes he cheated on his wife after he wakes up hungover the next morning and realizes he made a huge mistake, and he just wants it to be okay, but he can't allow himself to tell the truth. And he just starts descending in the stairwell of regret and remorse, and ends up kind of going a little crazy. And for me, the ammunition was that scene. So even though we didn't include it in the film, it gave me the emotional ammunition to have that performance. And to be honest, it was harrowing. It was tough. Even 2 days to be in that headspace of going mad. It was a difficult sort of situation. And I feel like I had to kind of get out of it after the shoot. It was pretty tough. But that's the thing, is being an actor, you really have to utilize all your experiences. And then that's why a great director is really helpful, because they're able to talk to the actor. And just one final example, when I was acting with an actress, a direction was given to her to, amp up the emotion from somebody. And for me, that didn't give the same, idea of what I wanted her to do on camera. So instead I told her, you're at the edge of this cliff and there's a void below you. And if you fall into this void, then you lose everything. You lose everything that we've built together. And the winds are pushing you left and right. And, and you're kind of balancing on the edge. And all you want, looking at me, is you want me to give you just a little itsy bitsy sign that I want you to be with me, you know, and that's all you need for you to come and pull me in. And that's where we're at right now for this scene, you know. And it was wonderful after I told her that, like, boom, it all worked out. So, you know, like acting and directing and writing, like all these I feel inform one another. And it's wonderful when they all kind of work together well.
Man, that's fantastic. And seeing your short multiple times, you definitely provided that. So that's excellent. I do know that we're already at the halfway mark, but I still want to hear the rest of your answers to this excellent question. In the meantime, we'll be taking audience questions. So if you have any questions, just feel free to type it in and we'll be sure to answer that shortly. But if we don't, please continue since we have not. Great. Then we're going to continue with this excellent question. I heard Tahare explain her process as an actor, but for Kevin, as you as a director, what helped you to get your actress to that point? Or was she kind of like, I'm ready to go, let's just do this?
Well, I think Tahare really covered quite a lot of the important points. I think probably what I can add to this question is to emphasize that what Tahare undersold in her answer is that she's on screen alone for every frame of this film. So the one big thing that I pushed for was to actually have all of the other actors who were off-screen voices who were on the phone with her to be there on set and be performing live. You know, the standard convention is that it's cost and time effective just to have your actor, you know, act against your assistant director reading their cross lines and have somebody into a sound studio and record two actors separately. But I really believed, and I think it holds true, that that there'd be much more nuance and much more, you know, reality going on in the interaction between all of these characters if they can actually be talking to each other live and in the moment. So we had just a little offstage sound booth offstage on the sound studio that we were working at, where all the actors would be working, and it really gave a chance for there to be live and real interaction, which I think is particularly important in the last chunk of the film, where there's some pretty heavy emotional stuff that Sarani has to go through. So I think my one contribution to this was just fighting for there to be the right space, so that the performer that was going to have to do so much of the heavy lifting of this film was not just going to be on a stage by herself with a whole bunch of sweaty technicians for 3 days.
Oh yeah. So actually, I realize this question has very specific questions for each of your films because it does require that. What I'm most curious, especially for Koreatown Ghost Story for Minsun and Teddy, is that especially for Lyrica, or your main actress who went through a whole range of emotions and crazy things that happened to her. Like, I will have to say her acting was extraordinary in terms of just like what she had to go through. And there are scenes where, especially when, you know, oh yeah, by the way, this is a little bit spoilerific for anyone watching, so hopefully you'll watch the shorts because we're going to go into it. So with Lyrica, when she is placed in that acupuncture position and the emotions that she had from fear to, like, I swear to God, that teardrop that came out of your eye, was that something like, what was the process to get her into that? Or was the kind of like what Kevin was saying, like that actress was ready to go?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so we have to apologize to Lyrica Okano because we did the worst thing that any filmmakers can ever do to their actors, which is we started with the hardest friggin' thing. We had no choice. We had the makeup people there. They were ready to do a stunt that's a big part of the movie. And we started with the most difficult scene for her in the bathroom, which if you've seen it, you probably know why. And she, I mean, aside from blanking, she broke a blood vessel in one of her eyes, which was broken for the rest of the shoot, and that came from crying and screaming. And her voice was just dust after the first day because of all the screaming that we had her do. We have to say that she came ready, man. She's just a real pro. She crushed it. Those tears are all real. Everything she experienced emotionally, I believe, is real from watching her on the set. She brought it in every take. And on top of all of that, she gets complimented regularly in interviews with Margaret Cho about how funny she is. Which is kind of every actor's dream for Margaret Cho to say, "Oh, my lyrical kind of so funny." She just, we talked a lot about motivation in various scenes with all of our actors, but they were ready. All the preparation that came before, there was preparation that came before where we talked about who these characters are and what's going through their heads and what their emotion is, but they brought it and they just were brilliant.
Yeah, we feel like we didn't have anything to really do with it. We just stood back and let them be brilliant. And they brought it, and it was just such a joy and so gratifying to watch. And Lyrica, I mean, as her physical performance was just so awe-inspiring. She's a former gymnast, so she brought all that physicality to the role. And also she did all the acupuncture scenes.
And that was her first time
getting acupuncture. And she was just...
And that was real.
Yeah, she was just game. She just lay on that table and took it, and she loved it. Actually, she fell asleep.
But we should also mention that our third actor in the movie that people don't mention very much, which is Brandon Scott Halverson, who played Edward, was also phenomenal, and it's an incredibly physical role. He's also a dancer, and he really brought this kind of frightening person to life in the tiny little bits that he got to be
that
featured.
Jerky movement along the hallway. I mean, that was not enhanced in any way. That was him, being Gumby-like.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think more often than not, like when it comes to the monsters, especially when they're not CGI and they're in these horror movies, the actors who play them do not get enough credit because they have to do the most extraordinary physical circumstances, like what Brandon did. And then I can think of like his movements remind me of like the jerky motions of like The Grudge, like especially the actress who has to go down the stairs like that. It's just, these are the performances that make or break a horror movie. And it helps that when someone is so committed and has the capability to convey such horrific like motions that you buy it. So Koreatown Ghost Story is definitely, kudos to you guys for selling that, because it scared the living daylights out of everyone I know who have seen it. So congrats on that. For Joanna, since I know your role as the producer of that, like, what did the director have to say in terms of guiding that actress, especially because it's kind of like a Receiver, it was pretty much a one-person show. So like, what helped the actress in terms of getting her to that position for the short?
We had a lot of interesting challenges, but since the person she's acting across from is obviously graphics in the film, which are these emojis, so we actually shot that MOS. So that, and then we kind of, we rehearsed it with her several times, but then we also kind of cued her. So it was like, we would say vocally the emoji that was being on screen, and then she would react as such. But it was interesting. I think the biggest challenge for me was also like, because essentially the viewer is playing Pictionary, and I know I'm not that quick with that. So I was nervous in terms of pacing, if we could keep the momentum going, but is it going too quickly to where they can't understand what's actually happening? If they're actually solving the puzzle as quickly as it's, going. So I think luckily people do understand. I guess people are quicker at reading emoji language than I am, and maybe I'm more old school. But it was, another challenge was just our DP kind of did like a oneer through, and we kind of ran out of time and didn't really have time to do a lot of coverage. So that made me even more nervous, because now it's going to move so quickly, this one shot. Are we going to be able to time the whole thing? So we ended up using the shot and then just going back and like deleting emojis and adding them and timing the emojis to the camera work that we got, in hopes of like kind of keeping the pace of the film. So it kind of all worked out, but that was the thing that I was the most nervous about, just because it's kind of something that I've never done before in terms of making a film, just pacing to pictures, like reading hieroglyphics or something, if people would understand. But apparently it's 2021, people can read that very, very well. So it all worked out.
It's very true. We are very much in an emoji meme culture. So it's kind of like, we know these memes, we know these emojis. So it's kind of like, it's a question of just like, with your short film, like, how will it be perceived 20 years from now? Like, will we still be in the emoji world, or are we going to be something else? but it definitely is like a testament to the time that we are indeed very much emoji and meme obsessed. So it's just one of those universal things where we just go, yes, I totally get it. And it's just on a deep understanding because we've all experienced it and we all do it. So that's great that you guys produced, you especially produced a film that was relevant to our times and that fed into that. So that's awesome. And
Never
last
thought
but
of
not
that.
least,
Very
yeah,
cool.
last but not least, we have Luisa, which the interesting is your film is literally a minute long, or a minute long. So what was it like for Yvonne to act in something that was pretty much a minute?
Well, it was part of a film competition, and it was meant to be exactly 1 minute, including credits. So that was challenging. But for her, she's such a pro, and you can see her on CW's Kung Fu. But no plug there. She's an amazing actress, and it was pretty easy to film her. And her, I think we shot it in August, and we shot it in my apartment, and it was really hot. So that feeling of suffocation, I think she got it from like the space. And our night hag, who's played by Jacqueline Robbins, you might recognize her from other stuff, but she, like, the makeup kind of like helped her, like it helped her a lot, because this makeup was so, you only see it for maybe a second, and we took 2.5 hours to do it. And so it was this, like, by the time we got to the coverage with Jacqueline, Yvonne had already been in this like frozen kind of like anticipatory terror for hours. And so when we finally got to the part where it's like, she's being choked, it was kind of, it was her coverage, and, it's pretty easy it's easy to shoot 8 hours worth of stuff and condense it down to a minute. You're able to get a lot of different reactions, but it was actually hard to get it down because they had such great facial expressions, and it was really the music that helped as well. The music really helped carry the emotions in such a quick piece. So, yeah.
It's great. So we got time for probably like 1 or 2 questions more, and so my next question for you all is that, like, during the process of filming, were there any happy accidents, or were there any accidents that contributed to the filmmaking? Or if there were no happy accidents, what was some of the most difficult process, the moments to shoot during it? Either or, you can choose happy accidents or the most difficult thing to shoot, or both. So, Luisa, I'm gonna go back to you.
I mean, honestly, like, the filming process was probably the easiest part, which is funny. The editing process was the hardest because, again, condensing it to 1 minute. And what was the happy accident, but also really funny, was doing all that and then only seeing Jacqueline for less than a second and getting that hit of like, what the hell are we looking at? That was really kind of like came out of the editing process, and it that wasn't the intent, but it worked, and that was, thank God, because now it's in the Philly Asian American Film Festival. So
Great. Joanna.
My answer to that is kind of similar to my last question in terms of difficulty. It was just kind of the timing of the emojis. That was the most difficult and worrisome part. But in terms of happy accidents, kind of going along what I was saying before, it was actually our DP's idea to do the kind of the one shot. And that wasn't the initial plan. And I think he secretly wanted that to do that for his reel, for his own benefit. But and we ran out of time and couldn't really get more coverage. But it ended up working out. I mean, he is a great DP, and we get a lot of compliments on that one shot. People just like rave about that one shot. So it worked out, I guess.
Great. Minson and Teddy.
I guess the happy accident we got was catching the ghost that lived in the house on film. We were shooting one of the oneers towards the end of the movie, and it's basically just we cleared everybody but the cameraman and Lyrica. The cameraman was actually our DP, John Kang. So it was the two of them alone. Everybody else was in separate rooms, and they're running through the house. And I think the assistant cameraman who was watching the monitor said, "Cut! We have a person on the set." And everyone's who's on the set?
We were all accounted for.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. And he swore he saw someone in a mirror on the screen. So we went back and we got it a few more times, and then we continued to go on. I was always looking for that, trying to find where's that guy, where's that ghost that we caught, and I couldn't figure out. I couldn't find it. But then we had a festival director and a judge at separate festivals criticize us for having a person on set visible in that scene, and we still can't figure out where it is. So that's our happy accident, I guess. It could be unhappy. It depends on how that person died, I suppose.
Wow. Oh my God. Well, that's great and a little freaky.
Yeah. Ghosts follow Minson around. So.
Well, we did shoot at a nunnery. It was actually a former convent. So the owner of the house, it's next door to the American Horror Story house, and they used to both be owned by the convent. So it's got kind of a creepy history anyways.
Oh, wow. We got a few minutes, but I want to hear all your answers. So Trevor, next.
All right. So the most difficult thing to shoot was that because it was a 2-day shoot and we didn't really time certain things properly, everything that happened in like the underworld, or hell as we called it, it was like we were like, I think 6 or 7 hours like OT. We had to just like select the exact shots that we needed. There's no coverage, it was just like we need to really play it out because no one was available the next day, so people just stuck it out. And I bought pizza, but yeah, that was tough. The happy accident, I guess I could say, is spoiler alert, in the film, this body falls down the middle of the stairwell. And so to do this, we had to stuff a body, and we had 3 of them. And we had to get as high as possible because there was supposed to be 16 floors, but we cheated 7. So I went, to the 6th floor, dropped the body, and then it didn't fall right. It hit the 3rd floor because it needed to hit all the way to the 1st floor where the camera was. And then again, it happened. The 2nd floor didn't make it. We had one last shot. And I just I aimed it with my eye, and I just let it go and prayed, and it worked out well because that was the last opportunity. So we got it. We couldn't stuff the bodies together because after going down 3 flights or 4 flights, the stuffing was everywhere, So yeah, that was a tough one.
Oh man. All right, let's bring on home Kevin.
Without a doubt, the toughest part of the shoot, motion control. If you want to give your first AD a seizure on your last day of shooting, shoot motion control. They will love you for that. So yeah, that was tough. It's always tough. It always goes slower than you anticipate it being because it's such a technical, bloody process to go through. The happy accident, though, that was really enjoyable was the next weekend when we shot all of the dream sequence imagery, which was just a huge amount of fun because we shot with miniatures and like making miniature sea ice and things like that you can float through frame, and a whole bunch of little tricks I got from my friends who work in the effects department. That was great. That was so much fun.
Oh my God, that's great. My very last question, this is to wrap it up. For all the filmmakers and actors and producers here, where can we follow your work, or if it's social media? We'll start with Tahare and just go from there. Where can we find you?
You can find me online. My handle is super easy, just at Tahare Vijdani. Website and other things, and Instagram. Yep, there it is.
I guess maybe I'll go next. Also relatively easy. My website is interlockpictures.com. And that's also my Instagram and Facebook handles at interlockpictures. And I'm on Twitter for my silly little personal rants at ccamoperator.
Great. Trevor.
All right. I can be found at trevorjoe.com. The last name is Z as in Zulu, HOU. And I'm working on my debut feature film at the moment, called Ann Arbor.
Nice. Minson and Teddy.
You can find our film on Instagram. It's just at Koreatown Ghost Story. And individually, mine is on Insta. I'm Minsun. My name, MINSUN, and the number 10 on Instagram. What about you?
Instagram is Teddy, Teddy, T-Bomb, TBAUM.
Great. Joanna.
I'm simple. I'm Joanna Fang on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, the handle is JoJo's Fang, so JoJosFangs.
And last but not least, Louisa.
You can find me on Instagram under @Louisa, LOUISA _CBE. So Charlie Baker Echo, and that's where you find me. Where do you find you, Edward?
Oh, you can find me simply at Twitter or Instagram at Cinnabon Monster. Yes, Cinnabon, like the thing you find in airports and malls. So thank you all so much for joining our live stream, and thank you to the filmmakers, cast, and crew of The Darkness Within. This has been a lot of fun. And guys, if you have not watched the film yet, you can purchase tickets to rent the film on the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival website until November 15th. And if you enjoyed the film and want to watch more Asian Americans in theater, check out the live performances sections of the website and to see which local AAPI theater artists have to offer in their program for the rest of the year. And thanks again, and we hope you all enjoy the rest of the festival. Wait.
Got me feeling lonely. Need an escape. So tell me, is this love? I think I'm getting hungry. I'm feeling down from the last day. There's every place you set me right. I'm getting lit off the process. Anything you say, I choose. Spit my spoiled food. It's left, right, up, down in the top.